who are you and why do we care?
Yeah, I don't think you care. We'll start with the second question first. But the first one is I'm Jim Harp, high performance coach here in Georgia. I've been coaching for a really long time, actually, even when I was before college. So, I think I was first certified in the late 80s from Dan Santorum himself, a former CEO at PTR. So yeah, I've been doing it a long time. Unique wise, I don't know, maybe because we really kind of focus on the high performing side, and in high performance tennis in the U.S., even for a lot of the coaches that are working a lot with professional players, the majority of our work are with junior aspiring players who are really not yet high performance. So is there a unique thing about it? Our stated goal is that you come to our program, to my program, because you want to play at least at the collegiate level, right? But again, we still have a good many developmental players, college, for sure everybody goes to college who wants to go to college. And then, we have a handful of professionals that'll come through at any given time. And we've had a lot of guests and worked with a few good players as well.
Okay, so we talk with a lot of coaches in this setting, and many of them are country club types. Many of them are independents. They travel around. Many have a specialty. So in this case, what you're talking about is you handle really good tennis players who want to be great tennis players. You're in that range.
Yeah, I mean it comes down to development, right? It's a holistic model of development, which means we're going to try to cover everything. The easiest way to say it, I think, was said by Melanie Molitor, that was Martina Hingis's mom. At least she's quoted as the one who said it. It was every shot from every spot with every spin. And that's both, specific, but it's also analogous a little bit when in terms of, we want to cover the strength and conditioning, what it takes to be an athlete, waking up the right way in the morning, eating right, living right, all of the things that again is part of a holistic development model. And we try hard to stick to it, and it's got to be fun. Still got to be fun. It's a game. People want to enjoy it.
So the idea is you can work hard and still have fun. That's a thing.
It can be a thing. I didn't say it was.
That'd be a thing. That's depending on the coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The environment sets the tone for sure in the culture. Absolutely.
Okay, and we talk with a lot of certified coaches, a lot of them either RSPA or PTR. You're not just PTR certified, you're a guy who certifies coaches, right?
Yeah, so certifications, I've got some initials, I've done a lot of different things, and we don't need to get all heavily into that, but certain period of my life I started jumping into coach education after being in a lot of education myself. So I travel around the country and certify coaches as part of a coach development program for PTR, both level ones and twos, and have been doing that a good bit for the last 10 years.
And we had a conversation recently, and I want to ask about this. I say we only have a limited number of questions, but I like to poke and prod a little bit. But we mentioned the other day that you've certified maybe 1,000, or maybe you said thousands of
I
coaches.
would, I was guessing at it because we were in some other discussions,
Yeah.
with doing some stuff with PTR, and we're about to have a big announcement with that, and I was like, at least 1,000 coaches. It's got to be somewhere near there by now. I mean, and so many states, so many tennis facilities. Yeah, I would say, if it was 800 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,200, it's somewhere in there. It's a lot.
That is a lot, and that's fantastic. And I think all the coach types, especially those who run clubs and do hiring, might be calling you at some point and saying, "Where the hell are these coaches?"
Yeah, and you and I are having a little bit of that discussion yesterday, weren't we? The opportunity for career advancement, the opportunity for opportunity in the industry, and getting these younger coaches. And I think that's one of the things. And I'm not trying to plug the PTR, but with PTR's approach being a research and science based approach to development, it goes back a lot of the age and stage of a player. Now that could be a 40-year-old um, retired banker who wants to play tennis, and you understand who that is and what their capabilities are from a physical standpoint, cognitive standpoint, or in the world I'm in, you start with some early childhood education and skill acquisition and what ages are best to learn what things at, like speed, for instance. If you don't learn to run fast by 10, you're going to have a limited ability to run fast. That's just, there's a couple other windows that pop up. But in terms of speed and certain athletic skills, if you don't learn them early, it's going to be really, you're not going to have as good a windows later on. And language is one of those things too. I think there's been some pretty good studies on birth to 3 years old. If you start teaching kids languages, then way easier to get. If you try to teach me French, I'm still struggling, but I can usually get a baguette and a glass of wine, and that's good enough at that point.
As adults, we have minimums, and I'm pretty sure my 2.5-year-old knows a lot more Spanish than I do, even though we're pretty much learning at the same rate.
That's
And
great.
in this case, I know Bobby has been around you much more than I have, and I am sure he's got questions and has been looking forward to getting you in this setting for a while. So, Bobby, I want to step back for a second and let you talk to Jim.
Oh, I spoke to him yesterday. I mean, I speak to Jim all the time. Jim
Just
and I go back a long way.
Go back. We know where the bodies are buried.
That's right. We didn't have gray in our beard when we first
No.
met, so that's.
Mm-mm.
But in all honesty, Jim, obviously, what being a witness is along is going for the ride. One thing I admired, you always did the work. I mean, when you got into the high performance area, you traveled, you did the film work, you did everything. I mean, how much of all the grind do you think, makes it where today you're in the position you're in?
Yeah, I know a lot of it in the mentoring and the coaches, people like Mark Kovacs and Ann Pankhurst and some of these industry titans, not to mention just coaches at some of the conference, people are like, oh, there's a waste of time to go here or a waste of time to go there. I'm like, I just sat with Tom Gullickson down at PTR. We're sitting on the front row listening to Mark's presentation. You're cracking a joke or two and listening to some really interesting things on RPM and who generates what RPM. But those guys with a snack and a beer, a snack and a drink, all of a sudden you're having discussions about how this one learned to do that, how Tommy Paul was doing such and who changed coaches and opening your mind. So for me, yeah, I was a modest player, I was okay college player, nothing outrageously special there, underachiever probably. So when I jumped in on the certification run, it seemed to be the right thing to do, and just spent a lot of time and a lot of money to be around really intelligent people who were successful. And like my early years, and let me clear up high performance. We rarely get to coach a true high performance player, right? That doesn't happen a lot. So real high performance, these are your world beaters, these are your top tens in the country at older ages, these are your professional tennis players. Until then, you're just learning to train and you're on a development pathway. So people love to use high performance because look, it social media is very well. To those who don't know. But I mean, if I take my car to the shop, I don't know what their work. I mean, I know where the transmission is, but they could tell me anything about it. I believe them and give them $5,000. So high performance is overused. It really is. But for me, it's been a great pathway to learn from other people. And I was going to say early on in my career, I'm getting going and I really think I know what I'm doing. I got all the answers. We're going to do yoga, got all these great ideas. My guys are going to be the best. We're going to be so good. And we go down the Georgia qualifier and just get wrecked. Like every one of my kids out in first round. I'm like, oh, I suck at coaching. This is horrible. I'm the worst coach of all time. These guys are producing kids all the time. And you know how the industry can be, where often coaches are, oh, I could fix that kid. If I had that kid, I'd do this. If I had this kid, I'd do that. No, you can't. No, you don't. And you can't fix it. Most of the time, you can't. And that's a whole nother conversation. But there are occasions where it happens. However, it was humbling. Those are good coaches. They know something. They're doing something. They're not just producing one or two, they're producing one after another after another. You got to be open. And I have found that the best coaches are often the most open and the most talkative. There's no secrets. And I appreciate you saying that the hard work because I did. I put in real time, got up real early, worked real late, taught everybody. I taught everybody. I was a director of tennis, I was a head pro. My niche seem to be more on the performance model side and working through development. I was working with a player yesterday and there's a very specific timing issue, something that would appear very, very simple, right? Take the racket back at this point. When the ball hits the ground, you got to be at this place. Truly a really simple concept, but due to what's probably mostly neuroplasticity, right? Her ability to override a movement pattern that's already there and a timing pattern, it was a big struggle. It takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of years. And, in the club world, I never use the word neuroplasticity, and I don't use it with the kids either. But it sounds cool and it's neat. But there's a great video, by the way, the backwards bicycle on that, and it's a really cool thing to see. And it helps you understand how difficult it is. So getting on that road back then really humbled me up. Had to work harder, realized I wasn't good at what I did. And one of the best things I ever did was start learning about early childhood development, how people learn and how to coach, how to teach, not just have a coach with good ideas, what you think are good ideas. And truth is, it's hard to learn and it's hard to be a great teacher. So anybody who thinks they're a really good teacher, a really good coach, go take a look at a kindergarten teacher who's got 32 kids in there and she controls that class all day and they learn and they get out of kindergarten. That's a great teacher, great coach.
And Bobby, I hope you don't mind. I know I handed it off to you. I'm taking back over because I got a question that's been bugging me recently, and I think Jim has some thoughts on this. But my first question comes out of the conference idea of why would someone go to these conferences? And in my opinion, you just answered that. You got a chance to sit next to Tom Gullickson and watch Mark Kovacs give a presentation, and that's incredible as a coach. It isn't. It isn't. Doesn't have to be that much more than that right there. And I'm sure there is more. But more specifically, from a coaching standpoint, you've got a resume and results, and you can say, I'm a coach, I've developed these players, and that can be a bit of proof as to your ability as a coach. How does that compare with the guys that are certified and they're members of this association and they go to all the conferences, but they haven't necessarily developed a player in the same way? Because we've got plenty of coaches out there that are like, I don't need to be certified. All I got to do is develop these players, and that is my resume. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you got a couple of different ones. You definitely have some coaches who are the people we stand on the shoulders of. Dennis Vandermeer is a good one. Again, it sounds like I'm plugging PTR, but I'm not. I mean, I think he was just revolutionary in coach education. He was out there really early. So was, oh gosh, I'm going to forget his name now. I'll come back to it. But like Frank Giampalo worked with him out west. Can't think of his name, but he was doing research on mental skills really, really early. There are coaches who worked for these coaches that may not have gone down like a traditional certification pathway, but they learned things like walking on a balance beam will help you create balance skills, movement skills, potential coordination skills. So if you grew up in a program like that and that was your coach, and you worked for that person, you were probably mentored. I was mentored heavily. Gary Grolman was my coach here in town. He's a great coach, and he was mentored by Dick Gould at Stanford. So that pedigree, you hear it, you listen to it, you're around it a lot. I think it helps. But that's why certifications are a different thing. And certification by itself is like anything. Knowledge is great. But how to use the knowledge is more important, and then you never stop learning. It's not, it doesn't come to an end. It's for life, and you don't know what you don't know. Even the game now of tennis that we're in changes daily. I just saw the spin rates. I made a comment to Dr. Mark Kovacs is like we're noticing the takeaway shortening again. He's like, yeah, the game's speeding up again. Things are faster than ever. The takeaways are not jumping around the big loops. There's still some of the ladies in the WTA who are still breaking plane a little bit on the forehand, but we're seeing a little bit less and less of it. More of the Swiatek's and Sinner. So that's an evolution of the game, and you get around there, and you can do two things. You can learn it by listening to it, or you can maybe validate something. I've gone to these, and I think that's what becomes important about the conferences. You build relationships with coaches, you build relationships with people, but not everybody is going to do and go down my pathway with it. The presentation I gave at PTR last week was on integrating high performance kind of modalities and environments into club tennis. Club tennis is not doing a lot of high performance, and in the past it's been can be polarizing. Oh, they go over to that club for the high performance. We do this kind of tennis. I was like, so you don't have high performance coaches? Like, yeah. It's like, so you have low performance coaches? It's like, I'm pretty sure that's how we got pickleball. So, I think that's a huge fail, right? So there's no such thing as low performance. There's just, maybe you add 30 minutes to the end of a kid's class that goes, 3 to 4 with, younger kids, 5 to 7. And that fitness class, right? Fitness is running, jumping, catching, throwing, playing tag. So you got 30 more minutes. It integrates in the club model really, really well. Is it high performance? everything's high performance if you end up in that model. But if you don't have educated coaches who understand skill acquisition and age development, early childhood education, I can promise you this, you're going to have more pickleball. Got too much of that now. So, sorry, pickleballers. I believe in you.
That's all right. No, I appreciate that because we've got plenty of different types of coaches, especially in the Atlanta area. It's a fairly unique market where we've got everything from guys that only run major academies and only work with high performance. I'll use that with high level junior players to guys that run country clubs to guys that run neighborhoods. You know, the director of tennis isn't much different in a large neighborhood with 10 to 12 courts and a bunch of pickleball courts than it is from running a club with 10 to 12 courts and a bunch of pickleball courts. It's still a similar job. But to find a good coach, I think that's one of the hard things that people are struggling with right now is to say, okay, who do I call? And as a parent, I'm not a professional coach interviewer. So how am I going to go find somebody for my kid at whatever level is one of the things we've been struggling with recently.
Yeah, I think, also defining good coach. If I'm 58 years old, so if I'm 58 years old and I never played tennis and I want to go and I go take a lesson and this person is fun, they teach me how to play. I really enjoy my conversations with them. We're exercising at a level, I'm getting out of it what I need. I don't need somebody who has the skills to take me from junior tennis to college tennis. I'm really happy. That's a great coach for me. The ability to take a kid from 8 years old to college and professional, and I've done that now a few times because that doesn't happen a lot, by the way. Not many unicorns in the world that you're going to get somebody all the way there, and what level of that there even exists. But that's a different skill set. Being a manager of a director of a country club is a different skill set. I have to manage and be a business owner, and that's a different hat. It has nothing to do with the stuff I like to geek out about, like neuroplasticity or movement patterns or understanding abduction on a serve or something like that, right? So that tennis director is wearing a hat and understands a set of skills that are integral to being a good coach. Now, if you're in junior development, then it's a different ballgame. Your first coaches introduce you to fun depending on the age. If you are lined up in a row of six kids and the coach is feeding out of his hand and you're hitting two balls and going to the back of the line, I would much prefer the kids just play tag for that hour. Just let them play tag. We're going to get a lot further down the line of creating movement skills, balance coordination, catching, stopping, tracking, send receiving skills. So there's a ton of that. And I've been battling that forever as a coach developer. And I'm not opposed to hand feeding as long as you get in space. Just me saying that by itself, though, if you don't have those skills and you don't get the child started at the right time in the right way, you're going to miss things, and that's gonna have repercussions down the line. I can always tell somebody who's been hand fed a lot or been fed a lot, and it's usually pretty easy to see. And remember, it all comes back down to conversations Bobby and I have had a million times. We grew up in a generation where you played all the sports. So if you jumped into tennis, you'd already played it. You played everything. So teaching movement skills like stopping or changing direction, agility, I mean, we just did that because we played tag outside till midnight or something. And things, played soccer or football or baseball or whatever. So I don't know if that answers the question, but defining a good coach is what's good for you. Defining a good coach in junior tennis, okay, well, there's not as many. Then now you're down to handfuls.
Yeah. And Bobby talks about the specialty isn't the right thing because I've got a specialty, but that doesn't mean I can't run a club. I might not have that skill set. But Bobby talks about the big difference between a director and a head pro. It's a very different skill set, but also there's a personality type in there that you like to talk about, right, Bobby?
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, there's the theme, and you heard Jim say it, and I had a very similar experience with Billie Jean King back in the day when World Team Tennis came to Atlanta and did the finals, and it was Billie Jean King, and we were sitting there. I was fortunate enough to sit next to Billie Jean King where I was within earshot and to listen to her, the passion that she still had. I mean, first, she still had the bum knees and she was out there teaching Chandra Rubin at the time, who was the 16-year-old wonder kid, coming up through. Then she's at the finals watching Jimmy Connors. And so you could just see the passion. And kids are tough because you think that they're naive, but they know what they're capable of, and they want to be with somebody that shares their passion and wants to go for the ride. And if you don't have that passion and you don't want to go for the ride with them, understandable. Don't get into it. That's all. And that's one thing I think we're trying to do is help people realize this is what I'm good at, stay in the lane. But if you want high performance and you understand what it's all about, well, then there's a few people you go see in the city and do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not hurting my feelings at Windermere if you go see Jim, because Jim is far more qualified to do it than I am. Because as Jim said, I can do it all because I played football and I played basketball, but that doesn't mean I can't even say neuroplasticity. So, I'm not going to be able
Pretty
to throw
close
that word
there.
at you.
For a
And,
northern guy, that wasn't bad.
we came from Jim, and I also have another mutual friend who'll go nameless, who used to drop a little geometry and architecture into his lessons, and people would look at him cross-eyed, and you'd be like, all right, dude, this is not the right audience for that. So it's a tough gig. It's a tough gig, but again, what you appreciate with Jim, and I still, he's close enough where I can go over and see. 2 weeks ago, freezing outside, his kids were out there without shirts on because they're just, this is the mentality. They're coming to work. And
Might
I
be
was like,
violating something there with that one. I don't know.
oh,
Probably
that's true.
shouldn't have. It was the guys, by the way. It was the
Guys, it
guys.
was the
They
guys. It was
were.
the guys. But
It was.
but it
I
was
think it
like,
was. I
guys,
think it was like 35 degrees, and they were trying to out tough each other. I'm like,
yeah.
guys, you got to put your shirts on. I'm gonna get in trouble for this one.
But I mean, again, but you think about football, or that's
Mhm.
part of the macho-ness of it. I'm going to play in 20 below in Buffalo, and I'm not going to be wearing any sleeves. So I think there's such a mentality that feed into it. And again, we're not even getting into the other side. How do you manage the parent when you tell them, or you suggest, let's play tag for the first hour, because these kids just got to get far more coordinated. And well, the parent has an understanding or a little bit of tennis background because of what they've come from. But guys, we're not trying to, you said you wanted to be high performance. This is where we're at in the journey. If you want your child to be high performance, sometimes you got to be prepared to take what you think is a step back, and that's a whole different sell. And that's a whole different person who has the patience to be able to communicate that message and make people understand that this journey is going to take a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to convince Mrs. Johnson the reason she's on a 3-5 Alta team is because she didn't play enough tag. So, just trust me with this. But there is some education that you do have to help understand. Because remember, the parents, the only people they have are the other parents. And, you look at how many people in Atlanta played professional tennis, and virtually none of their kids are going to play tennis, by the way, because it's tough, but they don't have a background in professional athletics, much less collegiate athletics. So the idea of a holistic athletic skill creating environment's not something they would understand. So it has to be explained. And some people don't listen. There's nothing you do about that. I mean, you got 1%, the 2% that are going to jump around. They've been at every academy in Atlanta. They're going to go try to find the answers that have been in their closet the whole time until they get to the right place. And they often could have stayed right where they were the whole time because they didn't become world beaters. The ones who get to that level, if they're going to do something remarkable, they go somewhere that's producing top world class players because they're already at that level or pushing up against that level. If you're not top 20 in the country, not top 10 in the world, and even if you are, I mean, there's plenty of tennis in Atlanta and there's plenty of really good programs that can get you there. Um, so yeah, I mean, but explain it. You're right. The parents are always look, they're the sponsors. These are the check writers. This is their F1 team. I'm not. I'm hired. And, there's been plenty of times in my career where a kid was losing a lot. One of my best players ever lost all through the 14s, was really not good and they had to really trust me. And then it just happened again with another young man that we just sent off to college where we were waiting on some growth stuff and some weights and strength and conditioning to get to the next level, and we got there. But it's hard. That's why there's one percenters out there because they're 1% of the population, and we don't. I've only seen a few one percenters here. Have been on court with a few, but it's not common. A lot of us are in the top 10%, like as an athlete. Those are your really hard workers and modestly talented. You rarely see extremely talented and extremely hardworking. Those are your Ronaldos of the world, and your running backs in the NFL and things like that, right?
Yeah, agreed. And Jim, you got a whole lot going on right now. We've talked about a bunch of what we've been working on and things we want to talk about, and we could probably talk forever. But in this case, what do you have that you can share? I know you got some ideas that may not come out yet. You got some things going on with PTR. You're one of those guys that always has an idea, and the question is, what's actually going to happen? Do you have anything at this point that you can talk about that's actually
Yeah, we can. By the time this airs, PTR will announce us as the regional education center for Atlanta. So we'll run all of our education. Most of Atlanta's education will come through here, and that'll be in a couple of few things. It's going to be in the form of the level one, level two certs that we have, but there's also going to be a lot of specialty programming that we do for coaches. Some very specifically minded things like drill programs, things that we've done with the GPTA. I know we've been discussing that a little bit, but like we want to do a drill share. I had a conversations with Jorge Capistani about helping us out with that. He's the drill master, you know, and getting people together on things like, hey, I want to know how to teach a serve to a 3-0 person. How should I, an adult, how should I go about that versus, how I would do that with a 10 or an 11-year-old. It's going to be completely different. We're not going to be nearly as techy most of the time. So we'll try to, bottom line is I'm going to put a little group together. We're going to have a roundtable discussion of what coaches would like to have. And then we're going to try to program specifically for that, as well as the regular, what would you call the ladder of coach education that's going to go on here anyway. And there'll be some regional workshops that PTR does here that'll have some special guests and stuff too. So we're really excited about that launching. And that's coming soon. I think we're running a level one here on the 28th, looking at my calendar. Uh, and a level two, I think, in April again, and we'll have those going on monthly. And then most recently, I started a foundation called Roots to Rackets, and we're beginning a lot of community outreach to bring tennis to underserved communities and just really into the schools and the places that don't have it at a more affordable rate. The key is that tennis is expensive to become to get to college. I think it's going to cost you $500,000 to get $100,000 scholarship.
right?
That's being facetious, but it's going to cost you. It's very expensive, and it's just really not accessible to a lot of people, and especially right now, economy's a little bit of a struggle. I'm seeing some signs of some pulling back on how much investment's happening, especially at the developmental levels. And elite players who are tracking to college are pretty locked in. We always find a way, but for me, there were too many that just didn't have access to the sport and are not getting competent coaching where they're at as a result, because I tell people all the time, you're probably not coming to me because you want to make a high school team. We're too expensive. Like that's not that hard to do
Don't tell the
in
parents
most high
that are trying
schools.
to get their kid on the high school team that it's not that hard to do. But
High school's not, it's not a national track, right? This is not going to get you to Virginia Tech or Duke, that nobody's going to care. We want you to play high school tennis because it's fun, it's social, and we want kids who are participating in school activities. I think it's huge for that. I love the social part of it, and the team part of it is so fun. But, there's a lot of schools that are not very high level, and they also don't have professional coaches. They have teachers, and those teachers have very little background. So it's a different track. But anyway, it's not where people come. So I started the foundation that is also an innovation a project where we are populating health and nutrition onto the website now. What to eat, how to eat, how much water you should drink, just a lot of fundamentals, and eventually that'll spin off into more specific daily nutrition requirements, like how much fruit should you have a day, how many calories should you be eating a day. If you're an athlete, understanding your BMR, for instance, like basal metabolic rate. A lot of people don't know that one. That sounds fancy too, but basically it says if you're playing soccer and you're playing tennis and you had 2,000 calories a day, you're probably tired because you're not getting enough calories. And then on the flip side, I was inspired when I was in a Starbucks with a young man who had a huge drink. It looked like probably enough calories for my week in that one drink. And he was not fit. And I think he had a very loving mom who wanted him to have this really cool drink. and I'm glad he had it in a way, but he shouldn't be drinking that. That there's some other alternatives that would be, less of a caloric thing. So we're gonna target a little bit of going out to eat, for instance, is one of the things I'm talking with my builder on. And like if you go to Starbucks and your friends get the pink drink, but you want to be a little healthier, what could you choose? Here's some other alternatives because you're going to go to Starbucks, have fun with your friends, buy a drink. You want to buy a drink, buy a drink. But instead of this one, how about that one? If you go to Chick-fil-A, I know this is going to sound terrible, eat the grilled chicken sandwich or get the salad, right? Which is no fun. Nobody wants that. But anyway, that's kind of an overview and a lot coming down the pipeline on that one.
I love it. Bobby, you got anything else before I hit him with King of Tennis?
No, I'm very impressed about how mature we've been through this entire thing.
I haven't degraded yet, have I?
We have not gone down any spirals. So I'm very we've taken the high road so far. I'm very excited.
What happens when we do these things with friends, right? And I will not forget because when Jim and I spoke about asking him the king of tennis, he kind of had a bad taste in his mouth about the word king, and he wanted something a little more maybe Star Wars related. And I will, yes, reference my shirt of "May the Courts be with you." But I will change the question a little bit, Jim, because we usually ask if you were king of tennis. And in this case, I will ask if you were the Dark Lord of tennis
We're talking.
and could
There we go.
snap your fingers and change anything, is there anything you would do or change?
Yes, I like it. The Emperor, the Dark Lord, Voldemort, any of those are great with me. I thought about this and I didn't like the question at first. I think I sent Bobby thinking, I don't like that question, but now I like the question better because I have an answer that I want kids to want to be pro tennis players again. I want kids and communities to say, I want to be, like that person. I want to be Serena Williams. I want to be Francis Tiafoe. I want to be Ben Shelton. I want to be Madison Keys. What a great story Madison is. My goodness, what an incredible story that is. And I'm seeing less and less evidence, and I don't know what it's like in other sports, but the world's too pragmatic sometimes. Like as a 10, 11, 12-year old, you want to be the best in the world. I can't tell you how many Wimbledons I won on the wall in a third set or five set tiebreak, all against the wall. I mean, I imagine myself in that position every time. I don't think you can get greatness without that kind of ambition. So for us to continue to and to get back, and I think in a lot of ways USTA has done a really good job. I know I'm touting USTA. You guys hear that, USTA? Done a really good job through the high performance program, and we're seeing all the results of the Americans in the top again. But I want to see more of these junior players not being pragmatic and saying, oh, I'm 12, but by the time I'm 18, I want to play college tennis. How about you want to play on the pro tour and travel around, go to Paris and go to England and stuff. Like we've got to create a culture and an environment and a character set for these kids that they realize that's possible. And not only that, it's fun. It's an amazing journey. And frankly, as coaches, the destination is never the most important thing. It's always the road. It's always the path they take. You're married to the road as a coach. You hope the kid's married to their destination, but it's your job, my job, to make sure the road is the key. What they learn on the way, how they wake up. A favorite question is, how do you get up in the morning? And kids laugh at me because I'm old mostly and fat. But at the end of the day, the answer is you tie your shoes like an athlete. That's how you get up in the morning, tie your shoes like an athlete. And I just don't know that our kids are waking up like that anymore, like we used to. And I want them to know that that's a possibility. You can get there. Quit making your kid pragmatic at 12 years old, and let's go for the dreamers.
Bobby, you know I'm going to push back.
Go. Well, how do you do it?
There you go. How? All right, Dark Lord. How are you going to get kids to do this? How are you going to make tennis cool again? How do you, as the Dark Lord of tennis, inject some ambition into these kids?
Yeah, and it's not up to any one Dark Lord, is it? I think it's up to our industry in a lot of ways, and everybody wants to be critical of the industry, right? So change always happens at home. Be a good example, set a good example, teach things the right way. Quit using those catchy cliches, you know? It's chess, not checkers. Hit it where they ain't. Just be quiet, teach it right. Give them an environment where kids want to show up every day and compete. Show them how it is to get better. Show them things are possible. ATP players, WTA players, ITF players doing a better job of getting in front of the kids and making things accessible. The Western and Southern US Open, you know, we got to make sure in the industry that these kids have access to these players more, like F1, where you walk around in the compounds, or NASCAR, you walk around in the compounds and things like that. You get to see the paddocks and you know, talk with the players is pretty neat. We need to make sure that the industry is helping us do that, but it starts at home. It starts with academies like, hey, let's go to. I think we took a group of kids down to see Georgia Tech last month. It was really cold. Like I'm not going to hit outside. It was. We actually didn't hit outside that day, Bobby. I think it was 20 degrees. It was miserable, and I'm like, we'd be better served. And the kids loved it. Watch it. A bunch of them had never seen a college tennis match. Um, we have to quit pointing the fingers at the industry and be individual versions of the change, personal advocates of what needs to happen instead of looking at USTA or ATP or WTA or PTR, RSPA and tell them they have to do this, they have to do that. It's not a they thing, it's a we thing. And if you know, that's if the problem is getting kids to believe they can do it and be a part of that, um, we have to collectively be on the same page. Quit competing with other people, start competing with yourself, and try a little harder.
So he's not the Dark Lord, he's the Gandhi of tennis.
Redneck Gandhi.
We want you to be the change you want to see in the industry. It starts at home. I like that a lot, Jim. Thanks.
Got to
Thanks,
start at
Bobby.
home. It's a societal thing right now. I mean, you know, I deal with a lot of high school kids. I yell at them when they talk about grades. I'm like, you can sit here. I would love to have a debate on any topic. I don't want to hear about the grade. I want to hear about, as Jim said, the process. Tell me what you learned today. Don't tell me what you made. I'm not interested, because ultimately you're going to run up against the guy who's making the same grade. What's going to be the differentiator? And that's the part, like Jim said, I think the last lessening the creativity when they're young, the freedom when they're young, starting them on these paths so soon. It's tough. It's a different world than which we grew up with. I think the big is the opening. I used to I'd go out my front door and I'd play because the kids were all in the neighborhood, and you'd go a mile and you were in your best friend's neighborhood. Now that his mom became your mom. Today, my daughter grew up. I wouldn't let her go a mile away from the house. You know, it's different. And that's a lot of things that we have to overcome. And that's a lot of it is the great part. You know, that's when a little bit of empirical data helps to say what is the best way to choose. Don't let it be your only guide, but it's certainly got to be a factor in whatever you do.
Well, and that's, you know, there's part of that too, where the metrics, we have more metrics now than we've ever had. I mean,
Yeah.
when I go to metrics, it's usually a pretty high level player. I don't need to see a charted match of a 12-year-old. I mean, just keep it. I already know what's happening there. We don't need to chart that most of the time. Maybe a super national 12-year-old might be some things we want to see, but the metrics, like the big one is UTR, you know, and it's crazy to me, and it shows where we're at as an industry, that we're just not doing enough to get information to the new tennis players. But somebody will call me with a low UTR of a certain age group, right? Let's say it's a 4, right? So, you know, if you're 7, that's an incredible UTR. If you're 16, you're going to struggle to make a college team, but they give me 3 decimal points after the 4. Hey, my player is a 4.372. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I could not compute. I don't even know what hundredths we've gotten to. Are we in the thousands column? I don't know what just happened. But, you know, I can tell you this. Um, we've got to work harder to get folks out of some of those metrics. All the kids, the parents are, you know, it's hard on them. My kid's a 4, that kid over there is a 6. But these are the conversations we have in the performance model all the time. Again, if I say, you know, the Dark Lord version of it is, let's get back to being dreamers. That's how we got here. That's how we got Andy Roddick's. That's how we got Serena Williams, I mean, and Venus. I mean, the entire 70s and our dominance in tennis. Kids wanted to be like those people. Parents wanted their kids to be like that. Now they're saying, oh, well, you don't have much of a chance to do that. Let's just focus on going to college. How about playing in Eastern somewhere, Louisiana State University of Transmission Repair and tennis, and go there and play 2 or 3 years of college tennis. I don't care what your UTR is. Play hard, work hard. I mean, how many stories do we see of players making the NFL teams of random Division 3, random Division 2, schools you've never heard of, and all of a sudden, um, they're playing professional tennis. And I think Eric Buttarak speaks to that in a TED talk he gave. Division 3 tennis players don't go pro. I want to say he might have been number one in the world in doubles, certainly top five. So we got to get those stories out more. It is possible. You can do this. And quit saying you're just going to go straight to college. Maybe you're going to play pro tennis. 12 years old, I want you to dream. By 16, we'll define that pathway a little more. But we got to get kids young, and parents and families loving the game again. And the only way we're going to do that is all of us being on the same page.
There we go. I like it. Jim, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Bobby, as always, fantastic. And we'll stay in touch, Jim, because there's a lot going on. We know you're up there close to Bobby in that same area, and we will make sure we stay in touch. And I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.